Hey everyone, and welcome back to NDC. Today we're going to be exploring something that's pretty fun for Swift, widgets. And these are one of the best ways to keep users engaged right on their iPhone or iPad or even macOS, home, or lock screen. Today we're going to be building a cat fact widget, as you can see here, which is pretty fun. Not only on iOS, but also available on macOS. Here we can see it in the top left corner of my macOS desktop. No judgment for how messy it is, please. So we're going to start off with a really simple structure and see how we can build it into a widget. Along the way, you'll learn some cool tips and tricks so you can create a widget for your own app on iPhone and on Mac. So if you're interested in creating a widget using WidgetKit, let's go ahead and dive on in. So to get started with creating a widget for our iOS or macOS app, going to be tied in together, we do need Xcode on our Macs. We're going to create a new project. Now I'm going to be starting completely from scratch. If you want to add this to your existing project, you can skip ahead to where we're adding the widget. So I'm just going to create a iOS app project, and I'll call it Cat Facts Widget. Okay, interface, SwiftUI, and language on Swift. We don't need testing or storage. So for this quick sample app, we're just going to be creating a structure of different cat facts. I'm going to create a new empty file, and we'll call it cat fact. We'll start off by importing foundation. This way we can provide it like core types with like UUIDs and etc. We'll then create a struct, and we'll call it cat fact, which is going to conform to identifiable as well as hashable. From here, we want to include things like an ID will equal a UUID with the empty brackets, as well as some text, which is going to be a string value. This is going to be the fact to display. Then we'll create a static let of some sample facts. This is going to be an array of cat fact, which is our structure we had just created. And this will equal an array of all of our different facts. So for our cat fact, we're just going to choose the option with text. We can just add our facts here. I'm just going to add some random ones. I'm just going to quickly just populate this with a bunch of different cat facts. All right, if you want to copy exactly, you can pause the video. Otherwise, we've created this structure where we have our sample cat facts in our main app. Now we're going to be actually connecting this later on to our widget, and every single hour we'll be displaying a random new cat fact. So to add a widget to our project, we need to go to File at the top of Xcode here, and we're going to go to New. From New, we're going to be selecting a target. When you select a target, you should get a new pop-up window. It might take a second. We're going to go to iOS, and we'll be making this work for macOS after as well. And we're going to scroll down, or you can use the filter to find widget extension. You can then select it, hit Next, and we need to give it a product name. So I'm going to call this one Cat Widget. Now we do have a few options here. For the team and bundle identifier, it should be automatically filled out for you. However, for the live activity, include control, and configuration of app intent, these work a little bit differently. The live activity lets your widget also support live activities, like when it's on the lock screen or dynamic island. The control is used for interactive controls and widgets, rarely needed. For our simple displaying of data, we won't need it. And the configuration of app intent allows per widget customization via app intents. So typically I'll leave the live activity on. However, for our purposes today, we definitely don't need it. Make sure you're in the correct project and embed it in our application. So just as a note, when you first create a widget, you'll most likely see this little pop-up appear here. I had to get a screenshot, which is asking you, do you want to change the active scheme to be the widget instead of your app? Since we're going to be testing things out with the widget primarily, I would absolutely activate. All it means is in the toolbar up top, where next to where you can select your simulator, it's saying, okay, when you build the app, do you want to launch the widget, or do you want to launch into the application? So I would just leave this as the widget extension. You can change it if you really want to. Essentially, it means when we boot up the simulator, we're just going to go to the home screen instead of into the app. You'll also notice we do get a preview of a little sample app here, and it does a pretty decent job of giving us an example of how widgets work and a little bit how they function. Honestly, ours isn't going to be too more complicated than this sample widget here. And we have some comments and some sample codes. Essentially, we have a timeline provider, entry, view, and then finally the widget at the bottom that ties it all together, as well as a little example preview. If you selected the other options with the radio boxes when creating your widget, you'll actually find that you have a few extra Swift files with other examples as well. So we can see that the widgets are supported by previews, which is great. And we even have an option in the bottom. If we scroll down, we can see the timeline where we have multiple options. So in our first timeline, we have a little happy face. And in the second timeline, we have the emoji with the stars. So we're going to go ahead and customize our own widgets. Just as a note, when you are updating the schema, you can go to the top here and you can see your widget extension with the name, and you can edit the scheme or manage schemes. If we were to edit the scheme, under build, we can see when we build and run our app, what we're including it all in. So if you want to test the widget or not test the widget, you can check or uncheck mark these different options. Because we're working with widgets today, I'm just going to be running both. All right, it feels pretty bad, but I'm going to be getting rid of our template here, and we're going to be keeping the import on WidgetKit and SwiftUI. I want to create my own cat fact widget. I don't care about those emojis. So WidgetKit, this provides WidgetKit framework APIs for building widgets in SwiftUI. Well, we need SwiftUI views to be used in the widget UI. Now, the first thing we're going to start with is we're going to create a timeline entry. This is a single piece of data shown by the widget at any given time. A timeline entry is also kind of like a snapshot of data that the widget renders at a specific date. So we'll create one by announcing a struct, and we'll call it maybe an entry. So we'll call it cat fact entry. This is going to conform to the timeline entry, and then we'll go ahead and add our braces here. We're going to establish a date, which is going to be a Swift date. This is going to represent a date when the entry is valid. And then because we're using cat facts, let's go ahead and add a fact and conform it to our cat fact. But wait a second, we don't have our cat fact in scope. It's all the way up here. We had created it before. What is going on? Well, when you create a widget, it kind of lives in its own separate little world. And there's two main ways to kind of bridge these worlds. If you only care about one file, maybe you're sharing a JSON or the structure, you can go to the file in question, open up the right panel. You'll then see the target membership. On the target membership, you can press plus, and you can see, oh, hey, we can add this to our cat widget extension, and we can save. Now, when we return to our cat widget, we'll give it a second, that error is gone. They're going to be sharing the file. But if you have a ton of different files, maybe you're even using Swift data, this isn't a permanent solution. The better solution is to create an app group. So click on your app target all the way at the top here. We'll then want to go to signing and capabilities. We then want to add a capability. What we want to add, and we can see right here, is an app group. This is going to allow access to group containers that are shared among multiple related apps. Now, when we think of multiple related apps, this can mean, a couple different things. For our purposes, it's just going to allow the widget and our kind of iPhone app or macOS app to talk back and forth with each other. So we're going to add an app group. And you can see I already have one created. To create a new app group, you can press the plus button. What I would suggest doing is copying your bundle identifier, doing plus, you'll be given a group dot, then pasting your bundle identifier. This way you have your new container. Now, when we added this to the target, we had only added it to the app target. Go ahead and refresh that. It might be red. You'll also need to repeat this process in your widget. So make sure you've added it to the app target. And then when you click on the widget, you'll notice it's mysteriously missing. Let's go ahead and add that capability. And you should be able to see your app groups here. Oop, I don't want to add that one. And we'll add the cat facts widget one there. So make sure you've added it to all the different targets within your app. And now they should be able to talk back and forth with one another. This way, if you have tons and tons of files, you'll be good to go, as it's not just going to be on a file per file basis. Okay, so we've created our timeline entry. Now we want to create our timeline provider. This is going to supply placeholders, snapshots, and a timeline of the entries for the widget. So we're going to create another structure, and we'll call it cat fact provider. And this is going to conform to the timeline provider. We'll add our brace here. We can include any functions. For mine, I want to have a date and a sample fact. And you can see that it does not conform to the protocol. You can apply the steps for conformance if you'd like. Otherwise, I'm going to be creating our function called placeholder. And this is going to be in, use the autofill. And instead of returning some timeline entry, we're going to be more specific, and we're going to be returning a cat fact entry, which is the structure of the timeline entry we had just created above. Cool, and then within the function, we'll be looking at our cat fact entry, and we'll be passing through a date and fact. If you have other parameters, of course, include them here. So I'm just gonna be looking at that date again, and then I'm just gonna grab a cat fact.sample fact, and I'm gonna do the first one. I'm gonna force unwrap it. Now we're not quite done. After our placeholder, we also want to have a snapshot. So we're gonna create a function, and we'll call it getSnapshot. Once again, we have our autofill completion. This is going to be a really lightweight snapshot for any quick rendering. So for the widget gallery, for our placeholder we had above, this should be something that's just a placeholder in the widget gallery and while loading. Simple, fast, representative, pretty lightweight there. For our code in the snapshot, I'm just going to have an entry. So I'm going to put let entry equals the cat fact entry. And again, we're just going to pass through some placeholder information. For mine, because our widget's pretty lightweight, I'm also just going to be passing through the first one with an exclamation point. So this snapshot is just going to be for displaying it in the widget entry. If you want to make it something specific so people have a little bit more guidance while using your widget, feel free to do so. For me, it's just the first available sample fact of the cat, so we'll get a pretty good idea. All right, and one more function we need to do is the get timeline. So this is going to be our full timeline with entries and a refresh policy. I want mine to refresh, every few hours, maybe once an hour. That's probably what we'll do. And from there, we can kind of establish what that refresh is going to do and how often. So in our code, we'll have our entry once more. And this is going to be our cat fact entry with our date. And because we're not doing the placeholder, I'm going to have this be a random fact. So the fact is going to be the cat fact.sample facts. And from here, I'm going to have a random element. And this is going to be a completely random one from our list. So if you're doing like a motivational quotes every single day, you can like refresh it, once a day, every hour, every half an hour, whatever you want to do. Then we're going to establish a timeline. This timeline is going to equal the capital T timeline, and we're going to be looking for the entry and policy. So the entry is the array we had just created above, so we'll put that in our square brackets. And the policy, this is going to be how long until this refreshes. So for me, I'm going to do the after date. And within the brackets, I'm going to be looking at the current date and then the dot adding time interval. And I'm going to do once an hour, so 3600 should be good. So we're going to pick a random fact and refresh it every hour. Next up, we need to actually render the view. So this is going to be our SwiftUI view that renders the widget for a given entry. Keep widgets simple and legible at smaller sizes as well. You will have options of the sizes of widgets that you can choose. I always plan for the smallest widget. I don't see too many people use the really big ones anyway. So we're going to create a struct, and let's call this one cat fact widget entry view, which is going to conform to a view. This is what we're going to be using for displaying after all. We want to reference our entry up here. It's going to conform to the cat fact provider. And then from our provider, which is the structure we just created above, we want that dot entry. So this is going to be all the entries that we're going to be rendering. Next, we're going to be looking at the view builder. Afterwards, we'll have our variable body, view, which we're pretty used to when working in SwiftUI. And this is where we're going to be sharing all the content. Because we're also going to be showing you how to do it on macOS, I'm going to be making sure that our app is good to go for all versions. All right, we're going to create some content. So we'll have our let content, and this is where we'll be adding our code. So I'm going to have it equal a vstack, and let's have our text with our cat fact first. So put cat fact, and I'll add a little emoji of the pause as well. Because we're using SwiftUI, we can make any adjustments we want. I can add a caption, I can even make it bold if I want. Then let's display our text of the entry. This is where you'll kind of see, oh, okay, this is where my normal SwiftUI skills are going to be coming into place. That's a font. Again, I'm pretty safe doing a lot of like the smaller font styles, especially with the smaller kind of boxes that you have for widgets. Play around with it, you can test. We might have some longer entries, so maybe a multi-line text alignment. It could be pretty handy, and you can even add things like padding. Okay, outside of our vstack, this is where I'm going to be handling the macOS availability. So I'm going to reference a macro of if hashtag available. So we're going to be looking at the platforms. So I'm going to be looking at iOS 17.0, followed by a comma. We'll also be looking at macOS 14.0, comma, and I'm not going to be running it on watchOS, but you can include it as well, of 10.0. We're then going to always have the comma and then the asterisks. Essentially, macOS, iOS, watchOS, and newer, I want to adopt a container background API for any proper widgeting. This is going to help the widget blend in with new system materials and also supports different desktop styles on macOS. So within the braces, we're going to be looking at our content, and then we want a .container background. Now I'm going to choose the second autofill here where we have the for, and within the for, I'm actually going to put the .widget. Now I don't need this content here, so we're just going to go ahead and get rid of it, and instead add a brace, and we're going to have our color.clear. You can customize this all you want. I'm using color.clear to inherit any system material. You can swap it for a subtle color if you really want. Okay, and after our braces of if available, we can handle every other case with our else. So any older OS, I find with macOS, I typically like to cover some really old things. You don't know what people are running. We can keep it neutral, and we'll just have our content.background clear. So we'll do color.clear. So for newer versions, you want the container background. For the older versions, the .background color clear should be good to go. If you don't include this, you might get some really weird results on macOS. Okay, we're done with our cat fact widget entry view where we kind of rendered the view. The only thing left to do now is our widget definitions. We're going to be having a widget definition because we want to have some static configuration. This is perfect for widgets that don't require any user configuration. For ours, it's basically like, hey, I'm going to show you a cat fact, random one, once an hour, nothing too crazy. So once again, we're creating a struct, and we'll call it cat fact widget. And this is going to conform to a widget, the capital W. We'll go ahead and add our brace here. So we're going to establish a kind, and this is going to be a string, and we'll give it a equal and a name. And this kind is a cat fact widget. This is a unique identifier for the widget kind. Then we'll create our variable body, some, and instead of view, we're going to be doing widget configuration. You can see there with the autofill. This is going to provide entries via the cat fact provider and render using the cat fact widget entry view we had created. So we're going to look at a static configuration with the kind provider. We won't be needing the content, but that's okay. For the kind, well, we had just created the kind there. For the provider, if we remember, we created cat fact provider. So let's go ahead and put that through. We want to choose the one with the empty brackets. And then for the content and returning, we definitely don't need that. Instead, we'll be looking at every single entry. So we'll do entry in, add some space, and we're going to apply a container background at the configuration level so WidgetKit can always detect it. So we'll establish a base, and that will be our cat fact widget entry view, and the entry is just going to be the entry we had already created. We'll do a little bit more magic here for the newer and older versions of all the systems. So we'll do our if available again. Actually, if you just want to save some time, totally can just copy and paste this that we had created before. The only changes we're going to be making is instead of the content container background, it'll be base container background. Same for our else statement here. So again, for macOS, I'm using color.clear to inherit that system material. You can pick that subtle color for a tint if you'd rather prefer. Okay, outside of our static configuration, we can give a .configuration display name. So when people are picking through the widget gallery, we can give this one a name. I'll just put cat fact of the hour. And you can also include a description, which will also be a string of text. Learn something new about cats, and we'll see that when we run the app. One more thing I like to also include is the different sizes. I'm going to use that macro again with the hashtag if, and I'm going to be looking at the OS. So if we're running on iOS, we can choose what sizes we want with the property. The property we can use is the supported families. You can create an array if you want to have multiple things. And in my case, I'm going to be having the .system small and the .system medium. If you want to play around with different sizes, there's also the large and extra large. I'm just going to keep these two here. We can also include a hashtag else if, which is pretty cool, all one word. And let's say we're on macOS, because that's another one we're going to be running. We can once again add the supported families, and I'm going to add some of the bigger ones. So we'll do system small, system medium. Should always probably include a spacebar after your commas here. And let's do the system large. Once you're all done with your OSs, you can do the hashtag endif, and that should also get rid of your errors there. Okay, and we're pretty much good to go for testing. Now I'm going to show you on the iOS device first, and then we'll explore macOS. If you want to mess around with the preview, totally can. One more thing we need to add in our get snapshot, in our get timeline, is we need to make sure that we're adding completion. As you can see here, both of these have completion at escaping. So under the let, we'll be adding the completion, and the snapshot completion is going to be based off the entry above, and the get timeline completion is going to be based on the timeline above. As well as we have, kind of created our own widget from scratch. So whatever structure you have here that conforms as widget, so in my case, the cat fact widget, will need to go into our bundle, and we'll need to update the target. Now, if you have multiple widgets, you can just add them one after the other, and they should all bundle together properly. So if you have cat fact widget, dog fact widget, maybe you're doing a animal fact app, and you want to have all the different ones, you can include them separately here. Okay, let's go ahead and now run it on our iOS device. We'll test it out, and then we'll test it on our Mac OS. Cool, so when it does load up, you'll notice that it boots up with the widget as well, and we can see one of our random cat facts. And we also have the app that's also been installed. If you don't see the widget here, make sure you double check the scheme. So again, you can go up here, edit scheme, go to build, and make sure the widget extension has been added here. You can also try to add it by pressing and holding anywhere on the device background. Go to edit, add widget. This always lags like crazy for me, but press inside the search and then the widget. And you can even see our cat fact of the hour that we had included and learn something new about cats. Let's go ahead and grab the small one and add the widget. You can see it gets added here. We can resize it. And you can also actually, if you do have multiple sizes available, grab this little corner and you can change it into the other sizes or shrink it back down as well. But there we go. We have our little random widget. This one, it's telling us that house cats can run up to 30 miles per hour. Pretty cool. And when you do press on the widget, it will open the app. Now our app is completely blank, but you get the point. All right, let's stop running it on there. Let's go ahead and test it now for macOS, and then we'll do a little bit of a wrap up. So we need to go to our general tab, and we need to make sure that we're adding the target for macOS, not only for the app itself, but also for the widget. You'll notice now that we're on the widget one, we can no longer see Mac. Well, let's go ahead and add it once again. And we've already handled that. So I'm just going to go ahead and run it on my Mac. Make sure it's not the designed for iPad one. We can go ahead and run it on Xcode. Okay, on macOS, we do get this little WidgetKit simulator that should appear. It might take a little bit to load. We can see our preview of our small, medium, and large. Let's go ahead and add this to our desktop. So I'm going to right click on my desktop and I'm going to edit widgets, and you'll see another little bar appears. Hey, there's me with some steak and mushrooms. We're going to find our cat fact widgets here, and we can go ahead and add it and hit done. And there we go. Now in the top left corner, I have my cat facts. You can manage your widgets as you'd like to see fit. There we go. We have our timeline. We also have our snapshot and our placeholder and any information as well. So today we built a cross-platform widget app on iOS and macOS. We also quickly explored app groups and sharing data. Those in place, you can adapt the same widget for iOS and macOS with barely any extra code. If you found this helpful, like and subscribe. There's lots more that you can do with widgets and widget kits. This was a pretty basic example. So if there's something specific about widgets you'd like me to create a video on, let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, you can also let me know what kind of widgets would you build for your app. They're pretty fun and are a nice little extra way for people to engage. Again, like with wellness apps, why not create something that shows a different entry every day, every hour? Just adds a little bit more flair and polish to anything that you develop. Otherwise, dream big, code bigger, and enjoy exploring WidgetKit. Have a great day.